Imagine a tank built for blitzing across deserts, now forced into a world where motion equals death and silence is survival. A tank famous for roaring forward with a jet turbine howl, now crouches in tree lines, whispers through thermals, and fires like a long-range assassin. Ukraine took America's M1 Abrams, Washington's poster child for armored dominance, and rewrote the script so boldly that even US planners had to admit that's actually brilliant. It isn't brute force, it isn't Hollywood heroics, it's patience, sensors, deception, and shots that land before the enemy even knows the glare on the horizon was a tank at all. When the first Abrams rolled into Ukrainian training areas, expectations were noisy. Break the lines, crack the dragon's teeth, punch the door open for the infantry to pour through. Crews trained hard on gunnery and maintenance, learning the rituals of a gas turbine beast that drinks fuel like a rock star backstage and punishes sloppy procedure with thrown tracks and very disappointed mechanics. The US delivered, and everyone waited for thunder. Then the battlefield changed its rules. What rolled east into Ukraine wasn't a parade for heavy armor. It was a sensor web, a drone hive, and a minefield orchestra playing the same unforgiving note. Expose yourself and you die. Instead of trying to force the Abrams to be the hero of an older movie, Ukraine recast it as the deadliest supporting actor on the field. The playbook is minimalist and lethal. The tank stalks rather than charges. It advances to a covered firing point, pre-scouted by drones, hides its bulk behind berms and buildings, uses thermal overmatch to find hard targets, and kills at long distance. The gun speaks once, maybe twice. Smoke pops, the driver reverses into shadow. The crew changes position before enemy spotters can stack a kill chain. Shoot, scoot, switch angle, repeat. The Russians expect a center stage duel. Ukraine gives them a shadow fight. At first glance, that sounds like a demotion for a champion. It isn't. It's a promotion to the only job that matters in a sky ruled by $400 quadcopters and FPV kamikazes. Stay alive long enough to be decisive, over and over again. In a frontal armored slugfest, the Abrams is a monster. In a drone-saturated war, the Abrams becomes a phantasm. Hard to see, harder to fix, hardest to kill. The genius is accepting the war you have, not the one the brochure promised. Let's talk hardware fit. The Abrams Edge isn't just slabs of armor. It's the ability to turn a sight picture into a first-round hit at ranges that make lesser crews squint. Even in export trim, the thermal imagers, laser rangefinder, and stabilized fire control brain make small, fleeting targets feel awfully large and slow. That precision decimates enemy machine gun nests and ATGM teams, the small predators that make infantry hug dirt. Load the right round, and the 120mm becomes a Swiss Army scalpel, sabot for armor, multi-purpose for bunkers and brick, the commander's independent thermal viewer, the hunter-killer choreography, and the gunner's smooth stabilization compress the kill cycle to seconds. In this doctrine, seconds are a currency. Abrams crews spend them like billionaires. Protection remains the quiet superpower. Ammunition lives in an armored bustle with blow-off panels. If the worst happens, the tank vents its rage upward instead of inward. That buys crews the one thing no factory can assemble: tomorrow. And while export armor omits certain classified inserts, the survivability math no longer starts with take the hit. It starts with don't get seen, continues with don't get fixed, and ends with don't get hit. The armor is your last line. Concealment, terrain, and timing are your first. The choreography behind each shot is where the stunned part kicks in for American observers. Picture a small battlefield cell, a drone team on Overwatch, an infantry platoon in defilade, and an Abrams tucked behind a hedgerow. The quadcopter spots a Russian BMP inching along a forest road, calls range and bearing over an encrypted net. The commander plots a short dash to a hull-down nook, 30 seconds of turbine hum and track clatter. The gunner takes a cold, deliberate shot. The sabot round is a door slammer with a PhD. The BMP erupts. The crew dumps smoke, reverses, jukes into a second fallback pocket, then switches to an alternate lane before the first FPVs arrive, hungry for heat signatures and glory footage. To the enemy drone feed, it looks like being haunted. Contact, flash, aftermath, emptiness. At night, the effect is worse for the Russians. The Abrams feasts in darkness. The drone sees the wide, the gun sees the precise. Hunter-killer loops happen fast. Commander slews, gunner confirms, loader slams home, driver angles for cover. Mortar tubes, logistics trucks, and careless infantry carriers that linger more than a heartbeat turn into bright problems solved by a dimmer switch. The tank becomes a night stalker, not a desert sprinter. If day belongs to cheap flying eyes, the hours before dawn belong to the Abrams and its taste for hot metal. Ukraine layers deception like an art form. Inflatable decoys waste enemy drones. Camouflage nets, thermal discipline, and engine off lulls mute signatures. Crews rehearse micro movements, so short they look like fidgets on a map. 5 meters forward to clear a bush, 10 back to break line of sight, left into dead ground, right into defilade. If there's a joke here, it's that the Abrams loud turbine, once mocked as an alarm clock for Russian artillery, becomes doom metal only for a handful of seconds per engagement. The rest of the time, it hums in the background like a refrigerator with anger issues. This doctrine squeezes value from scarce numbers. 31 tanks can't dominate a 1,000-kilometer front by presence, but 31 used as omnipresent surprises. Here at dawn, there at dusk, change psychology. Russian convoys creep, mortar crews sweat, ATGM teams feel watched. In a war of attrition, fear and hesitation are interest payments on a loan the enemy can't afford. The Abrams isn't the spearhead. It's the omnipresent veto. There's another, less glamorous stroke of genius. Logistics reimagined. The turbine engine is thirsty. Everyone knows that. Ukraine's answer isn't to pretend otherwise. It's to restructure the tempo. Short, lethal sorties mean shorter exposure and smaller fuel footprints. Refuel under cover, reload under nets, move at night, mask in daylight. Fuel trucks shadow the tanks like stagehands in black clothing. In and out before the spotlight finds them. Maintenance? Distributed. Crews run tight checklists, swap parts in the shadow of barns, and treat the supply chain like a stealth puzzle. You don't eliminate the Abrams appetite. You feed it in sprints. Pair all that with electronic warfare, and the tank's survivability spikes. Drones still hunt, but jammers blur their maps and warp their control links. Soft kill bubbles don't make armor invulnerable. They make every enemy pilot's easy shot a coin toss. And tanks don't fight alone. Short-range air defenses, dismounted riflemen with shotguns for FPVs, and cleverly placed anti-drone guns create a layered umbrella. It's the same logic as ship defense. No one system stops everything, but together they turn certainty into doubt. Doubt buys time. Time buys life. Zoom out to combined arms, and the Abrams becomes a conductor's baton. Infantry owns terrain. Artillery owns time. Drones own information. The tank owns decisions. The magic is in small, repeatable plays. Delete an ATGM nest anchoring a trench. Crack a fortified dacha that pins a platoon. Snatch a logistics truck trying to sneak ammunition to a mortar line. Each precise kill rearranges the local threat map, opening 10-minute windows for squads to leapfrog a ditch or clear a tree line. When the enemy recalibrates, the tank is somewhere else, idling under a mesh of leaves, listening to another drone's whisper. We should be honest. Losses happen. Some Abrams have been hit, hunted, or immobilized. Drones don't care if a target is storied. They care if it's exposed. Ukraine's response was a doctrinal shrug that feels downright cold-blooded. Pull them off the hottest sectors, fix the patterns that got them tagged, and re-employ where survivability equals relevance. That isn't retreat, it's tactical adulthood. Armor lives by rhythm in this war. In, strike, out, rest, relocate, repeat. It's a drummer's heartbeat, not a trumpet's blast. Now, why does this stun US observers? Because for decades, American armor culture has prized tempo, mass, speed, decisive breach. The Abrams was born to sprint with mechanized infantry, to roll over open ground with artillery smoke as its curtain, and attack helicopters as its cavalry. Ukraine is teaching an old champion new choreography. Tanks earn their keep not by leading the parade, but by making every enemy plan feel provisional. Ambush math replaces breach math. Time on station is measured in minutes. Exposure in seconds. Lethality in single digits of rounds per contact. That isn't less deadly, it's more surgical. Let's walk through a day in this new life. Dawn in the east is grey and full of flies. The tank sits in a farmyard under nets, its crew moving like monks, quiet, methodical, ritualistic. The commander checks the drone team's route package, pre-surveyed lanes, alternate hides, pre-cleared fence gaps, and a timing plan tied to artillery smoke and EW pulses. They brief contingencies: FPV swarm, pop smoke, drop a decoy thermal, displace to hide Bravo, artillery counter battery, turn 90 degrees and roll for the culvert. The splash grid is plotted for where you were, not where you'll be. The loader double checks the ready rack. MP-AT near the front for bunkers and brick, Sabo for armor, smoke for sudden entrances and rude exits. He jokes about naming rounds like pets, then taps the stack anyway. Habit is the armor of nerves. On the move, you can feel the discipline. No skyline silhouettes, no lazy arcs across open fields. Every motion is a puzzle piece rotated until it fits. They park hull down, nose angled to the escape route, smoke grenades ready like spare lives. The drone buzzes high, sees a pair of Russian IFVs pause at a woodline. Coordinates flow. The tank nudges forward a meter to clear a branch and make the shot. The gunner breathes out. First round lands clean. The second target panics, reverses into a rut, exposes its side, and dies to a follow-up. The commander doesn't watch the fire. He watches the clock. 30 seconds later, they're already ghosting away, smoke trailing like a magician's sleeve. By midday, they've displaced twice, changed lanes once, and waved off a tempting logistics convoy. The enemy's FPVs are thick in that sector. Discipline means passing on dessert if dessert might explode. They burn one decoy to soak up a pair of drones, then slip back under foliage and let the turbine cool. The driver checks track tension and listens to the hull like a mechanic listens to an old piano. The loader mutters about coffee. The commander dozes for 6 minutes and dreams in map symbols. War is a grind, but in this doctrine, the grind serves you. Every hour you're alive and unlocated is an hour the enemy wastes energy looking for ghosts. Night resets the board. Infantry moves, sappers probe, drones prowl the edges of villages, searching for warm engines and careless cigarettes. The tank comes back out, a heavier shadow among shadows. Thermals paint the world in black and white and gilt. Somewhere down a lane, a mortar crew fumbles with a tube. The commander marks it. The gunner stitches the aim. The loader's hands are a metronome. The shot lands. And silence returns, thicker than before. There's a dark humor in it. On a good night, the only thing louder than the turbine is the silence it leaves behind. The supporting cast around the Abrams has evolved to make this possible. Artillery now thinks like a boxer with fast hands. Short jabs of smoke, quick counter-battery slaps. No telegraphed haymakers that invite retaliation. Engineers laid deceptive lanes, sometimes clearing a path, and then closing it again to make patterns unreadable. Electronic warfare teams play whack-a-drone with jammers and decoys, turning enemy feeds into static at the exact second a tank needs to cross a gap. Even the humble camouflage net is a character with agency. Multispectral fabrics, insulated engine blankets, and tactical patience flatten signatures that used to scream, "Hi, I'm a tank." All of this runs on trust. Infantry trusts that if they call for the Abrams, it will appear, strike, and not draw a storm of fire onto their heads. The tank crew trusts the drone team to see the threats that thermals can't. Thin wires of an AT mine, a distant operator under a tarp, a glint in the wrong place. Commanders trust crews to break contact without permission if the picture turns ugly. The paradox of this doctrine is that it looks cautious but demands nerve. It asks a crew to stand within gunshot of the enemy and believe in their timing more than in their armor. The Russians aren't static in this story. They adapt too. They mass cheap drones, seed culverts with mines, bait tanks with decoy vehicles, and launch FPV packs on patrol like angry bees. They litter likely hides with artillery whenever they see smoke. The cat and mouse never ends. But the Abrams' new role makes the cat harder to corner. Every time the enemy thinks they've scripted an ambush, the tank declines to play the part. It refuses to drive down the expected road. It refuses to loiter where drones learned to hunt yesterday. It refuses to let the enemy's tempo become its own. If you're listening from Washington, the lesson is clear. Tanks aren't dead. Dumb tanking is. The future is sensors, signature control, counter-drone layers, and doctrine that treats heavy armor as stealthy, direct-fire artillery on tracks when the air is angry. The Abrams already has the bones for this: stable guns, crew protection, and a fire control stack that thrives on disciplined speed. Add lighter signatures, better active protection, smarter logistics, and a standing partnership with drones, and you get armor that outthinks the battlefield rather than trying to outrun it. There's also the human dividend, and it matters. This doctrine values crews. It trades cinematic charge scenes for quiet hunts. A loader with a coffee and a checklist under camouflage netting is as much a part of victory as a gunner who threads around through a bunker slit. War is cruel. This is cruelty reversed, in small mercies measured by return trips. Every time a tank lurches out, fires, and slides back into shadow, you can almost hear the collective exhale over the radio. Another clean engagement, another team alive. Let's not forget humor, the frontline variety that keeps people human. The tanker's joke book is a survival kit. Someone names the drone feed Bird Box Office and gives it 5 stars. Someone else calls the turbine the world's angriest hairdryer. The loader debates whether sabo rounds have personalities. The quiet ones always hit first. It's gallows humor, sure, but it oils the hinges of nerves. If you can laugh, you can breathe. If you can breathe, you can aim. Back at headquarters, staff maps look different than they did in older wars. Instead of arrows and axes racing across open fields, you see clusters of micro-operations. Short fires, shorter moves, carefully timed silences. The Abrams is penciled in not as a formation, but as a service. Request 1 hot scalpel for 5 minutes, grid 41. It shows up, does surgery, and leaves the stitches to infantry. That's how you stretch a small fleet into a significant effect, by refusing to waste a minute of it. If this sounds like special operations thinking applied to a heavy tank, you're not wrong. The Abrams is treated less like a battering ram and more like a precision instrument with its own doctrine of discretion. The irony is obvious and delicious. A 60-ton vehicle teaching the battlefield about subtlety. The tank that once symbolized overwhelming force is now the apostle of restraint. And restraint, paradoxically, is what makes its force overwhelming when it chooses to appear. So, what's the strategic payoff? For Ukraine, it's tempo without self-destruction. Local initiative that doesn't bleed out battalions of metal to buy a mile of mud. For the US, it's a live-fire laboratory that validates priorities already whispered in think tank halls. More sensors, quieter signatures, integrated EW, active protection as default, and doctrine that bakes in drone partners from the first briefing slide. For Russia, it's another reminder that mass and momentum can't beat an enemy who kills from the edges and declines your favorite fights. Can tanks still lead? After Ukraine's Abrams season, the smarter question is, can tanks still outthink? Because in a sky full of drones and a land full of mines, the Abrams that survives is the Abrams that waits, watches, and kills with one quiet, perfect shot. It doesn't announce itself with a broadside. It doesn't chase applause. It kills the right target at the right time, from the right angle, and then disappears like a rumor you only half believed. That isn't retreat from history, it's the next chapter. And if you're the enemy, it's the chapter where every hedgerow is a question mark, every crossroads is a trick question, and every answer is 120 millimeters wide. The Abrams doesn't promise to be everywhere. It promises that anywhere it shows up, the conversation ends. That's why the US is stunned, not because the tank changed, but because Ukraine made it smarter than the battlefield expected. In a war that punishes pride and prizes cunning, the Abrams' new role is pure genius. A whisper that hits like thunder, a shadow with teeth, a legend that learned to survive by learning to think.